Okay, we're talking about the word surrender.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now let's just take into account one of us is going down the road. Okay? Hypothetically, you've got a driver's license, right? You've got the insurance, you've got the ownership. This is the normal scenario for most people. So let's just look at it. You are what you are in the moment, okay?
Yeah.
Let's not make this complicated, that I'm going to play this game, that I'm going to give them no jurisdiction or any of that nonsense. Let's not go there. I don't want to do that. They got bats and guns, and that's really stupid. So let's just go down the direction. You've got the driver's license, you've got the ownership, and you've got the insurance. And he's now saying that you're supposed to surrender this to him because you've been just pulled over by a guy you don't even know. He's got a badge and a gun, but you don't know he's real or not. He could have kidnapped some other guy and put him in a hole somewhere else and taken on his clothes and put on the badge and put on the uniform and gone out there playing cop, right? You have no idea to know that guy's real anyways. It's all based on assumption. So let's assume that the cop is the cop it's supposed to be. And the first thing he's going to want to know when he pulled you over is he wants you to surrender. And if you don't give him the driver's license, he'll charge you with failing to surrender the driver's license. So don't do that. What would be the point of doing that when you've already got the driver's license? So surrender. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Correct?
Yep.
Very simple. Let's not make this complicated. You didn't pull him over, he pulled you over.
Right.
And he said he wanted you to surrender. He interrupted your course of wherever you were going. I don't care if it was business or pleasure, leisure, rest, whatever you were doing, he pulled you over. Now you definitely are at rest when he pulled you over. Okay?
Because you're arrested.
Okay? So you're at rest. You're not moving. There's no moving violation going on there. And he's asked you to surrender. So what do? Surrender. Now what do you do when you surrender? Come on guys, how much have you ever watched the movies? Do a proper surrender. Say, I surrender. I give up. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I must have been playing something as an escapee somehow. Give him the driver's license. Give him the birth certificate that caused the driver's license to occur. And give him the insurance and give him the ownership and say, I surrender. But I'm going to tell you, you let the officer know. In all due respect, officer, I know you may not know this. But I'm doing everything improperly with the law. You've asked me to surrender, and I will be giving you that, but I will not be taking it back. Because for me to take it back, that'd be opposite to surrender. And I'm sorry, I'm not part of some catch and release program. That's called sport fishing. And I'm not part of sport fishing.
Actually, when you surrender, you become on their side.
Yes.
That'd be like becoming on their side.
Now what happens to
and
a
then
prisoner
going back again.
under the war
At least when you're on their side.
when you're under that,
friendly.
there's conventions that were established based on a prisoner surrendering. So if I've surrendered, I don't even know what the war is, but it appears I signed up to something that seems to be against the guys that are going down the road, because they wouldn't be asking me to surrender something if truly I was actually a good guy. You don't need someone to surrender unless they're violating a law. So they're saying, oh, you've got something that belongs to us with that vehicle labeled with that plate. It says Ontario. It's got a crown on it. I need you to surrender something. Are you surrendering technically something that's good or something that's bad? Is that really the attachment to that vehicle? What you're giving that cop with that picture, that driver's license, and that registration?
You know how you can look at it? You can say to the officer, this is a great
Well, at least
opportunity.
we know we got actual camera. You're on the camera.
Thank you.
So,
You surrender.
yeah, you surrender to the camera.
Come, surrender to him.
It's amazing when people don't know what they're doing, they usually just walk into the surrender.
So in the magic of Hollywood, we can edit it all out, or
Yes.
actually keep you in there.
All I can say is, cashew! Thank you.
Listen, you can say to the cop, thank you for this opportunity. I've had this wanted guy, this bad guy with me all the time and accused. You've now given me an opportunity to surrender him to you.
Right.
I surrender it
Well,
all
put it
to
this
you.
way, the
You
perfect
can't
thing
give it
is,
back.
Say
Look at it from the guy who doesn't know anything on the law. Some do go a little deep, and it's good because I think sometimes when we're in these independent discussions, we don't care. There's a lot of people watching this video that will have already been down this knowledge before. For the people who haven't been down it before, this may be completely like water and oil. It don't mix because they've never been down this before. So their mind is in one space, and what we're saying is in another. But let's just look at for what it is. The word surrender is a pretty simple thing. So if I surrender, I give up. Why isn't he taking me away since I've surrendered? There'd be no need for me for surrender unless I'm committing a crime.
Which is?
Okay? He didn't ask me to give the driver's license. He asked me to surrender it. It says failure to surrender the driver's license is under the Highway Traffic
Right.
Act. That means give up to the higher power, the larger estate. Because you're holding something in a lesser estate somehow, and they're able to use that against you. So someone's in more power what's going on. Now, I can talk from experience. When I was arrested for failing to identify, I was even a passenger in a vehicle. And I was pulled over on a normal ride check on a holiday weekend, and I wasn't wearing the driver's license, mainly because it was 100 degrees. That's no excuse in the eyes of the law for doing something if you're a member. I didn't have any ID on me. But they told me right off the top that if I failed to provide identification or tell them who I was, I'd be held until an RCMP officer identified me, which told me right off the top the OPP were not in jurisdiction on those highways. At least not on the identity. I wasn't even the guy operating the vehicle. I was the passenger. This happened by pure, unforeseen occurrence. I did not plan this. I jumped into a vehicle to go down the road to travel with somebody into a town, and I just wasn't wearing a seatbelt. But in order to give me the charge for the ticket, they needed to identify me for that ticket. And I'm not here trying to get in the way, it just opened me up to a thought. Because what came out of the mouth of the officer, out of her pure training, she must have been trained to say that because she didn't make that up on her own. Because they follow procedure. And she said that if you fail to identify, it's like failing to surrender the driver's license. So it'd be like failing to provide identification of who you are. In the event you fail, because they're creating an event now to happen. In the event I fail to identify, you'll be held until an RCMP officer identifies you. Well, the funny thing about that story was I responded back, well, that could be a long time since I don't know any RCMP officers. So how could an RCMP officer identify me? I knew it had to be the actual documents they would have to receive. How long would I have sat? I don't know, and I'm not telling people to go down that direction. But by walking with common sense, you tend to have a much better experience to come to a conclusion on a subject. So if you haven't walked it, you don't know. And most of the things that are going on with these free man movements are ridiculous, theoretical stupidity. And the guys promoting it may not even done the stuff that they've even said that they've done. The proof is in the pudding. I don't believe them when I watch them on the videos because I can tell they're not telling the truth. And it doesn't really work well when you have a relative who's an attorney general, assistant, or involved in that department, because that even makes it more convoluted.
Oh, who do we know like that?
Okay? So at the end of the day, we've got to look at reality for what it is, not because someone told you it. So in other words, I'm not telling you to do something. I'm saying maybe you need to look at the realities of what something is. And if they're asking you to surrender the driver's license, the ownership in that, you want to be a good guy, surrender it. I'm actually saying subject yourself to the higher power. Surrender it. Where in the Highway Traffic Act did it say to you for you to take it back? If he needed me to give it up, then I shouldn't have had it to begin with. Because he's writing up a ticket, which means I've already done something wrong, and I would have to be in a jurisdiction to be charged with something based on the fact of who I've identified myself to be. Not based on the fact that I'm the right guy. The right guy doesn't get into a problem. It's the wrong guy gets into the problem. So whoever he's perceiving me to be, his procedure seems to charge somebody who's already in the wrong because they would need to surrender something because they'd have to be an enemy. They'd have to be an enemy of the state to begin with. Now, an enemy of the state would be impersonating something that belongs to someone else. So how did I impersonate someone? Well, look at your birth certificate. It doesn't have your signatures on it. So why would you go and start taking over the signing authority of a public official and go get a driver's license and then take a picture? And that's why they tell you not to smile, because it is not a pleasant experience. You are not doing a good thing. The spirit of holiness is not smiling on you. Therefore, you shouldn't smile. You became unevenly yoked with unbelievers. You're violating even the Ten Commandments about making an image of yourself and then making an autograph to it. You're no longer needed by God, now you're wanted by the enemy. Now that's just an observation. I can't tell people to do these things, but what would be wrong in that moment when the officer tells you to surrender, to not do a full surrender? Wouldn't it be good to let him know that if you hand him the documents he's demanding, that you are not going to take them back? That would make you free, wouldn't it? Because if he's not taking you in upon the surrender, what did you surrender? Well, it appears it detached from you. It's no longer you. It's only an image of you and a document. Well, if you've surrendered it, let him keep it. He's the guy who confiscated it because he's demanding it. He even says if you don't give it to him, he's going to arrest you anyways. Wouldn't it be better just to get arrested? Then you'll be at the rest. Then he would have to prove their jurisdiction regarding the documents. You said, I gave you what you wanted. I shouldn't have had them to begin with. I don't want to take them back. It appears you want to take them away. They can't be a good thing. If you just want to look at them, that's one thing. But you want to take them, and you want to take them into your vehicle. Now you've removed them. Now they're in their trust. But during their trust, they write up a ticket. Because it appears you're doing something wrong, or they couldn't give you a ticket. It isn't based on the moving violation. Because the Highway Traffic Act does not talk about the highway. The interpretation of the act is about everything that has nothing to do with the highway. Therefore, it's totally ridiculous from the beginning of the act, under the interpretation of it. Because de factos do not have jurisdiction over de jure. So therefore, it couldn't have anything to do with the public highways, because the money that runs our system is all private. So that's a private highway if they're giving you a ticket. So in other words, they can only give a ticket to a private. Maybe you want to try being a public. It's a lot easier to be a public than a private, but I thought we were supposed to be the public. But the minute you give that driver's license to the officer, you're now a private. Because you've identified yourself with private use. You're driving. That's business. And the word prodigal, if you know anything about the Bible, on the prodigal son was he wanted to take his own way on his estate. And he ended up being a spendthrift and blew it all. Well, wouldn't you see society's running that way now with trillions of dollars in debt because everybody's gone private instead of being public? If everybody was public, there wouldn't be a problem. The only people who get affected by this concept of public are those that believe in wealth, greed, and theft, and usury. They're the most evil scum of society.